I'm glad to see that you all survived the great blizzard that happened this weekend. I've lived in Maryland for 6 years now. I still don't understand why Howard County Schools closes school on a Saturday for snow that has not yet fallen. It makes no sense to me. Yeah, but here we are. We all survived. We made it. Congratulations. We're starting a new series today, a series I'm excited about. We're in a season that's called Lent in the church calendar. It's the weeks that lead up to Easter. And Easter, of course, is the story of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. And Lent is a time for us to walk the journey towards the cross and the empty tomb with Jesus, to remind ourselves of who he is and what he's done and what he invites us to be. And that's exactly what I want to do as we lead into Easter. We're going to be walking through some stories in the Gospel of John over the next 6 Sundays. And in particular, I'm interested in the multiple times in which Jesus says to someone, "Follow me." Simple as that. It's an easy, simple invitation. Follow me. And yet it's an invitation that can make all of the difference in the world to someone who makes the choice to trust Jesus and to follow him. But I think, I may be wrong, but I think that this language can be a little difficult for us as Americans. Because as Americans, we are taught to be leaders. Everything about our culture teaches us about leadership. Go to Barnes & Noble and check out the book sections, and you will see leadership books, and there is no section for followers. Leaders, leaders, leaders. I've read many of these books. All I had to do was type in leadership books into Google, and I found picture after picture after picture of piles. They looked like garbage discard piles of just leadership books everywhere. I'm being made to read one right now, Atomic Habits. It's good. I like it. It's a good book. I actually like leadership books, so I'm really not like pooping on them. I like them a lot. I enjoy thinking about it. I was born in 1981, so I'm kind of like on that edge generation between Gen X and millennial. And going through school, we were taught in every class. I mean, we could be talking about biology, and they would tell us about how we need to be a leader. Leader, 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 leader. There's 2 things I learned in American public education in the 80s and 90s. One was you need to have self-esteem, and 2 is you need to be a leader. That's all I learned for 12 years. Be a leader and have self-esteem. Here's the problem I eventually realized on my own, and I don't know that I've solved it to this day. I would look around a classroom of 30 other people just like me, from the same neighborhood, in the same school, in the same level class, and I would think, this teacher, this guidance counselor, this principal is telling us all to be leaders. And I would think to myself, what is the end of that? If everyone's a leader, who are you leading? Here's what gives me great hope about the scriptures and the stories that we're going to look at today, is that it's one opportunity, different from the rest of the culture that we're pressed into, to trust someone to be our leader. Jesus says, "Follow me." And it's a profound and simple invitation that he gives over and over and over in the Gospel of John. It starts, this invitation, in chapter 1 of the Gospel of John. And so we're going to look at the story of Jesus calling Philip and Nathanael and look at this simple invitation that Jesus offers to follow me. The text we're going to read today is John chapter 1, verses 43 to 51. And I invite you, if you would you stand with me as we honor the reading of God's word today? John chapter 1, verses 43 to 51. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You will see even greater things than that." He then added, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. You might notice that there are a lot of names for Jesus in this text. He is the son of Joseph. He is from Nazareth. He is the one the prophets spoke about. He is the one Moses spoke about. He is the Son of Man. He is the Rabbi. He's the Son of God. He is the King of Israel. We're invited to see Jesus from many, many different angles, and the testimonies are beginning to fly about who this is. But in this text, more so than describing who Jesus is, there's two invitations of which we ought to do with this information that we're given. The first is Jesus to Philip. He says, simply, "Follow me." Follow me. And there is, of course, a Greek word that means follow. I'm going to show this to you right now. That's the Greek word. It is akolotheo. Akolotheo, I think. It means to follow. Now, that's simple enough. That's obvious enough, right? We know what follow means, but of course, in languages, much like English, there's nuance, there's angles, there's ways to think about it. And so some of the nuance of which it might mean, if you're reading Greek in any context that this word shows up, it could mean just simply to accompany. It could mean to attend or follow. Or this one I like a lot, to journey with. Now, you can see in English how follow could mean to journey with. But there's something powerful about this idea. There's not a hierarchy in it. There's just getting to know someone who knows the directions. There's going alongside. There's enjoying time with. There's passing energy. There's a direction. There's a place that you're going, and you're not alone. Following and journeying with are compelling and interesting images that were given in this word. And this is the invitation that's given. Just simply journey with me, come along, follow, see where I'm going, see what I'm up to, see what I'm going to do. Just come along. All of these things are such simple invitations, but they're compelling. They're so compelling, in fact, that Philip gets this invitation, and he not only wants to accept the invitation, but he wants to invite his friend to come along as well. Now, in our world, we live under such incredible pressure. The pressure we have in work, in school, can be a lot at times. These are just some ideas of things in which we're told regularly that we have to be as our pieces of cogs of the economy, of the machine, of the way the world works. We have to produce and imagine and create and work, get started, keep going, lead, direct, make deadlines, be novel. We could go on and on and on. And the truth of the matter is this relentless pressure to constantly be on the cutting edge, to constantly be out in front of things, to constantly be producing, to constantly stand out can be demoralizing and exhausting and difficult. But Jesus' invitation is the inverse of this. Jesus is saying, I will take care of where we're going and what we're doing. I will take care of the destination. I will take care of the growth along the way. I will take care of who you're becoming and what you're producing. Just follow. Just come along for the journey. Just get to know me. Just understand where I'm going and what I'm up to. That's all you have to produce. There's another place Jesus is quoted as saying that his burden is easy and his yoke is light. He says, come with me, for I will give you rest. And this language is often very profound, people. I've heard people say that's their favorite verse in all of the Bible. And it's because I think it stands in such contradiction to the stories, narratives, and directions that we're so regularly given in our everyday life. To just simply follow Jesus and to let him have control is a different way of thinking that we're so often formed from our youngest of ages. Well, this invitation to Philip is so exciting, to just simply follow. He's so overwhelmed that he makes the decision to go and testify to his friend Nathanael that he has met the Messiah, the one the scriptures have talked about, the one they long for. And he offers a simple invitation as well. He goes to his buddy Nathanael and he says, come and see. So Jesus invites him to follow. He invites his friend to follow, and his friend is a little more suspicious than he is. Philip is ready to go. Nathanael is not so sure, as I imagine you can understand. I suppose, in fact, if someone, an itinerant preacher, came through town and said, hey, follow me, and you left your wife or your parents or your kids to follow them, you would probably be called crazy by the people who love you. So you can appreciate that you've got to be pretty certain in the context of this scripture to leave everything behind and follow Jesus. Philip is certain. Nathanael is not so certain. And here's Nathanael's hang-up. It's pretty great, I think. Yeah, Nazareth is a dumpy town, man. The Messiah is not coming from that place. That's his whole hang-up. Like I've been studying the Messiah, the scriptures. I've been longing to see God's very chosen king come. There's no way he's coming from that other side of the track, no good town. No chance whatsoever. I mean, have you even checked him for bed bugs? And Philip's response to that is just simply, dude, you've just got to meet him. You've just got to come and see what he's doing, what he's saying. If you get to know him, you will believe like I do. Now, I know many of you have watched the well-produced, well-written show, The Chosen. And in that show, this scene right here is captured in about a 2-minute clip that really, really, I think, demonstrates very well just what the hang-up would be, just how difficult it would be for Nathanael to believe that Jesus might come from a place like Nazareth. Check this clip out.
This is who the baptizer has been preparing us for. Nathanael. He's the one.
The one?
The one who Moses foretold and the prophets said would come.
The what?
The one. Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph.
Nazareth. Oh, can anything good come out of Nazareth?
Come and see.
Oh, little dump on a craggy hilltop.
I'm serious.
No paved roads, no public buildings. They barely have a synagogue.
You can't. You really can't.
Hey, I'm just telling it like it is. Why can't I do that?
Because you're mean.
The families, illiterate day laborers and peasants, by the way, sleep under the same roof as their livestock.
Listen to me.
Honestly, Philip, saying the one is a Nazarene is practically heresy.
Just Come and see. What? You gonna be late for work?
Wow. That's dark. So dark.
Your whole life, you've wanted to serve God, to meet the Son of God, the King of Israel. I promise you will not regret it. And if you do, I'll refund your misery. But I know you. You don't mess around. You will want to join him. He's like no rabbi who ever has been or will be.
I've never seen you talk like this. I'm still hung up on the Nazareth of it all.
Come and see.
It's a great illustration of how that conversation might have gone. It's hard to overcome this belief that the very Son of God, the King of Israel, would come from such a blip on the map. But this scene, this story, this text in John also has some background that may matter to us in our gathering here today as well. The question at play is, can anything possibly good come from Nazareth? Well, you may know our church here is Crossroads, but it's part of a denomination called the Church of the Nazarene. I'm going to give you just a little bit of history related to this text. There was a man named J.P. Whitney from Southern California. He was a medical doctor. He was the second president of the University of Southern California. Go Trojans. True story. That University of Southern California. And he's also the co-founder of the Church of the Nazarene. And in co-founding the Church of the Nazarene in Los Angeles in the late 19th, early 20th century, he was the one who came up with the name, the Church of the Nazarene. And it was in reading this text in the Gospel of John that it occurred to him that we could be the Church of the Nazarene. He was from a Methodist persuasion, and everyone around him was trying to figure out how to co-opt the name Methodist into their new movement. And he thought we ought to do something completely different. And so he proposed Church of the Nazarene for this reason. This is quoting him. Other are talking about his quote. Other proposed names included various youths of Methodist, but Whitney told the congregation that after praying all night about the matter, he liked the word Nazarene because it identified the church with the lowly, toiling ministry of Jesus, the Nazarene. Now you see, this is post-gold rush Los Angeles. This is people have sold everything in their home to move to the West, hoping to strike it rich. This is not the glitzy, glamorous, post-Hollywood Los Angeles that you think of now. It was gritty and grimy and difficult and hard laboring, and there were a lot of people who were poor and struggling and had nothing, and there was no local economy to really boom your family. If you didn't find gold in Los Angeles, you likely were just on a decline into poverty. And poverty was taking out men and families left and right. Gambling was rising, alcoholism was rising, and women and children were being left in the dust. And Whitney and Phineas Bresee, the other co-founder, the two of them wanted to do church for people who were caught up in this difficult economic, kind of Old West, kind of not quite Hollywood Los Angeles. This bustling city just getting started. And they wanted to be for people who were struggling. And Whitney, in praying, saw that Jesus emerged out of a people who were struggling. Jesus' ministry comes out of a town where people are thought less of, where people aren't seen as valuable or mattering. And for some reason, Whitney notices that God sends his son into the world to live among people who are struggling. And he thought, that's the launching point for us to start this ministry, to recognize that Jesus sees people in their struggle and he dwells among them. He doesn't start in the top floor of the Hilton and wait until he is 30 with a great portfolio, a wonderful college education, and a trajectory towards power. He begins in poverty around struggling, hardworking people who just can't seem to get ahead. And Nathanael recognizes this. He shows us this. Why in the world would God come out of a place like that? Why would the king be born into lowly and toiling people? It makes no sense in terms of how we see the world. And yet, this is where God dwells. God dwells among the lowly and the toiling. It's a mental block for Nathanael at first. It's a place that Nathanael can't make sense of. He can't square it. And yet Philip is insistent, come and see that God is showing up, living, dwelling, working, healing, helping, and inviting people like you and I who don't seem to amount for much in terms of power or wealth or prestige. But it's actually in our kind of just okayness, kind of just barely making itness, kind of just okay, kind of not that good looking, kind of not that wealthy, kind of not that impressive. It's that kind of person that Jesus is living with. And if that isn't good news for us, I don't know what is. You see, in light of all that's happened in the last few years, in light of all of the struggle in the moment that we live in, where there's been the great resignation, and we talk about the loneliness epidemic, and there's a mental health crisis, and inflation and costs are soaring. We live in a 24-hour news cycle. There's no off-season for politics whatsoever. We live in a pressed world. Like, you cannot turn on the TV, check your social media without being confronted by all of this really depressing stuff. That's the reality of our situation that we're in right now. It feels like we can't escape depression and bad news and scary things and wondering what's going to change with this presidential candidate or that presidential candidate, or whether or not costs are going to crush us, or if there's a recession coming. The news loves to be bad. And we can't escape the bad news. In that situation that we live in, Jesus invites you to follow him instead of all of that. Jesus is desperate to offer to you to take just a little bit of the load off of you, to offer you rest. Maybe come and see that Jesus invites you to. Maybe the follow me is an invitation that you're desperate for. Maybe you're tired of trying to make it, squeak by, stretch yourself. Maybe you're tired of trying to lead, to be impressive, and to be cool, and to be strong. And maybe, just maybe, this invitation of Jesus to take a little bit of the load off is what you need to hear today. But the story concludes with just a little bit more. Nathanael needs to receive the invitation. Nathanael can't just stop being told, come and see. He needs to say, okay, I'm going to get up and go. I'm going to go see for myself. I'm going to make a decision of my own, because Philip's testimony is not enough for Nathanael. Nathanael needs to make a decision for himself as well. He cannot live off of Philip's testimony. He cannot go home and say, yeah, my buddy Philip says he met the Messiah, and expect that's going to change anything for him. The pressure is on Nathanael, to trust Philip to the point that he'll get up and meet Jesus and make a decision for himself. And so sure enough, he does. Jesus comes into town and he sees Nathanael, and Jesus says, "Here is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." And Nathanael cannot believe it. He feels like that's who he is. That's who he's tried to be. That's who he's wanted to cultivate his life to be. He wants to be a good Israelite. He wants to be the kind of person in whom there is no deceit. And he feels as though Jesus somehow knows him before he himself ever met Jesus. And Nathanael is blown away. "How do you know this about me? Who are you? What is going on here?" And he and Jesus have a conversation. And Nathanael makes a decision that what Philip decided, that this was the King of Israel, the Messiah, the Son of God, this really is who it is that I'm seeing. And the both of them decide to return to the first invitation, "Follow me." And they do exactly that. So in closing today, I ask you, what have you decided about Jesus? There's lots of things that you can look at Jesus, and you can decide a lot of things. He's a good teacher. He's a good ethicist. He was a great Jew. He's a great man. But what we're called to see is the Son of God who takes away the sin of the world. You see, this story flows out of a story right before in John chapter 1, where that's what John the Baptizer says about Jesus, that this is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And they're not following Jesus just to hear some good sermons or to see a show of some good healings. They're following Jesus because they trust the testimony that's been handed to them, that this is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And that is what Nathanael and Philip are truly desperate for. They live in a broken and sinful world. They long for God to do something miraculous amongst them. And sure enough, they found it in Jesus. Just like Jesus shows up and sees Nathanael, he sees you too. He knows you. He understands you. He cares about you, and he comes to you. And he offers you the same exact invitation. Follow me. And what you'll find if you're willing to follow Jesus is that he performs miracles, he washes feet, he serves the downtrodden, he cares for the poor, he's worried about the emotionally struggling, and that one day he will die sacrificially and innocently for people like you and I, that our sin might be removed and we might be able to come into relationship with God. When the invitation comes to follow Jesus, it's not a scary and difficult invitation. It's one in which you see just how far God will go to be in relationship with you. So what will you do with this Jesus? What have you decided about Jesus? Today, as we sing this final song, I invite you to make some decisions about who you really think Jesus is, what you really think Jesus does, what Jesus is really up to in our world today. And if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God who takes away sin out of the world, what's stopping you from saying, yes, I will follow him? The altars will be open if you'd like to come and pray. And all you need to pray, if you're unsure of what to pray, all the first prayer you need to pray is, Jesus, I will follow you. It starts there. That you want to receive the gift of his forgiveness, that you want to be made new, that you want to be in relationship with God. You don't have to pray as if you are some sort of bishop in a massive cathedral with long, flowy words. Just tell Jesus the truth. And that'll start you on a journey towards salvation, towards wholeness, towards something new. I invite you to take that risk of standing and following Jesus. Would you stand with me and sing this final song?